Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Brew It or Screw It, a Commander deck building podcast. I'm your host, Cody, alongside my good friend, Lazz.
Hey, how's it going?
Pretty good. How are you?
I'm doing good. Excited to do this one. This is a fun one.
Yeah, on to episode 2. As we've said on each episode so far, we're fucking nervous, so...
I feel less nervous now. I feel like we're finally getting a good rhythm, getting kind of into the hang of this. We're trying to squash a couple of audio bugs of, for some reason, trying to play podcast on Bluetooth and it's super quiet. I have no idea why, but we're hoping it's figured out for this one. And if not, we'll take care of it next month.
Yeah, we're going to get down eventually.
Yeah.
Just a little practice runs, things like that. But, yeah, welcome back, everybody. So if you don't know, Brew It or Screw It is a Commander deck building podcast. Once a month, one of us brews a deck and brings it to the table. We talk about it. We talk about some of the challenges with it, some of the things we enjoyed when we were brewing it. And at the end of the episode, we ask the question, should we say brew it?
Or should we say screw it?
Yeah. So... we never talked about this in like the episode 0 or last months, but like we're swapping each month, like, and so it's my turn this month, and so but like we never really talked about it, and I think we talked about it like after we ended the last episode.
Okay.
We were like, oh, we never said who's next, but like the point of the show is that like every month we're gonna swap off. And so it's my turn.
Yeah.
And I finally got to build something that I think I've been wanting to build for a while. I've been looking at reanimator decks lately.
Yes, you have.
And so the brew of the month is titled, You Enter the Necromancer's Lair. This is a Esper deck helmed by Sefris of the Hidden Ways. Sefris is a white, blue, black legendary creature human wizard. Whenever one or more creature cards are put into your graveyard from anywhere, you venture into the dungeon, and this ability can only trigger once a turn. They also have another effect called Create Undead. Whenever you complete a dungeon, you return target creature cards from your graveyard to the battlefield, and they are a 2/3 human wizard.
Return to the battlefield, period. Sefris is a 2/3 human wizard. Made it sound like they return to the battlefield as a 2/3.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
I was just, reading out the stats of the card. Sorry. But yeah, so I think I've been looking at reanimator decks a lot lately, and I think this one kind of stuck out to me for a few reasons. One is it's, the basic getting a creature back, which is what reanimator is all about, but also it introduces the dungeon mechanic. And just recently, our pod, we started playing cards that introduced the Monarch, and I was like, well, that's a lot of fun. The dungeon stuff is also pretty cool. Let's introduce that in a way.
I have never personally once played against anyone who's worried about a dungeon. I remember I saved the oversized dungeon cards when the set first came out, and they've just been sitting here. I've just never really thought to focus on it. So I'm actually very excited to see how it goes.
Yeah, and I think the issue we'll talk about soon is like there's only really one dungeon you want to be going through with this commander because you want to get through dungeons as quick as possible, and this commander can do it very quickly because it has on the card itself a way to venture into dungeons, and then there's a lot of cards I put into the deck that venture or take the initiative, things like that.
So what dungeon are you focusing on?
We're focusing on the Lost Mind of Phandelver. This is just a 4-room dungeon. I know there's a couple of other ones. I think a backup one would be the Undercity one because we have cards that say you take the initiative.
Right.
And if you play one without being in a dungeon, you have to go into the Undercity. So those two would probably be the two I'm swapping back and forth on.
Okay. Now, can you have two dungeons at the same time?
You cannot. It's just the one.
But once you finish one, then you can bring out another dungeon. You don't have to do the same dungeon a second time.
You don't, but you can keep doing the same one over and over.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Okay. Just making sure everyone gets it.
Yeah. Just the main goals of the deck being get through dungeons, get value from those dungeons, get a lot of big, as I like to call them, big boy creatures into the graveyard so that when I complete a dungeon, I get to bring back something big. That's the whole thing I wanted to do like Reanimator 4 is cheating out
Big creatures.
big creatures without paying their hefty cost. And so that's kind of the fun side of it.
I think it's a very creative way to do that because there's plenty of decks that you could have played to cheat out big creatures, and this one, it really the only way to cheat them out is to, one, get them in your graveyard, and then two, finish these dungeons to shoot them back out onto the battlefield. So I think it's a very fun and creative way to play the archetype that you were hoping to accomplish. Is it the best Reanimator commander out there? By no means at all. But I think it's going to be a lot of fun because the dungeon mechanic's cool. I love, like you mentioned, the playing Monarch in our games lately. It's fun to have kind of like a little thing on the side, just anytime it's another little facet that adds to the game. That's fun. It's something for nothing, It's like, oh, I'm in a dungeon apparently. I get to scry a card. It's like, all right, yeah, why not? So I think it's a fun way to do it, and plus now you get the benefit of hopefully getting some big boys out there.
So yeah, I'm really excited to talk about this deck. I think it's something that's really a lot of fun that I've had for the past month. Just kind of waiting. Not the past month, past 2 weeks is when I sent it to you. But like I've been waiting to hear like your thoughts on it because it's something we've been talking about for a while. Is me making a Reanimator deck, and I feel pretty strong about this one.
I was surprised when this was the one that came out with. You're like, I think I'm going Reanimator. I'm like, all right, what's it going to be? Let's see, Sefris of the Hidden Waves. I was like, all right, wasn't expecting that. Wasn't even really expecting Esper, even really. So it was fun to try to see some ways to accomplish what I know you want to do with the deck, and I kept it short and sweet. Only 10 editions, so yeah, we'll get to that in a little bit.
And I guess I kind of have like a sort of Reanimator deck with my mono black Necron artifact deck because there's a lot of bringing stuff back from the grave and all that. But like this one like really leans into like
cheating out big
pitching
guys.
cards and cheating them out and things like that. Because in that deck I'm still having to pay mana values and things like that. This is just trying to get them out for free. But let's dive into like a little deck breakdown. Okay. So I got 36 lands, 34 creatures. A lot of creatures, just make sure I'm at least getting something put into the graveyard, either by discarding or milling. And then I always want to be able to have creatures available to either venture into dungeons or take the initiative. Only 4 sorceries. We have 11 instants, 10 artifacts, 4 enchantments. And then I broke down kind of the different types of cards. And I have 9 pieces of ramp, which is very low for someone who's usually playing a green deck.
There's no green in here, so.
No green, so yeah. Had to do a lot of artifacts. 10 pieces of card advantage, 12 pieces of removal, 2 board wipes, and I broke this category into my creatures. I have 15 Dungeon Diver cards and 9 Big Boy cards. And some of these big boys I really like. Like, there's just some really cool ones. Like, I think a personal favorite of yours, Lazz, Avacyn, Angel of Hope.
Absolutely love Avacyn.
Big old Angel gives other permanents you control indestructible. It's an 8/8. Massacre Worm, just a giant board wipe of a creature. Shieldred, the Whispering 1. It's Reanimator on top of Reanimator, but also makes other people sacrifice things. Just some really cool creatures that I really enjoyed when I was putting this list together.
All right. Well, you're kind of talking of some of the cool creatures you added. So what would you say your favorite cards in the deck are? I think last month with my deck, I kind of just picked one favorite from each category that kind of warranted it. Kind of just went through and picked some favorites. So
I have a couple.
Okay.
I try to do like 1 or 2 in each category.
Okay.
So for creatures, I have Sister Hospitaller. This is from the Warhammer 40k set. It's a 4 generic, 1 white, 1 black. has the ability Medicus Ministorum, which that's a mouthful. When it enters the battlefield, you return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. You gain life equal to its mana value.
That's a great card. It's a great card.
That is a very good card for what I'm wanting to do, because this is just another way on top of Sefris to get a big creature out. On top of the fact that I have Avacyn, which is 8 mana. I have Ashen Rider, which is 8 mana. What else I got in here? Sun Titan 6 mana, Shieldred 7 mana. So like I'm getting life back and getting a big creature onto the battlefield. And so yeah, it's just kind of really strong.
And even, if you play her and she comes out, you return a target creature, and then say she dies, when you complete your dungeon, you bring her back out, and when she enters the battlefield, you bring another creature out of your graveyard too. So it kind of double dips into the whole reanimator thing that you're going for with the dungeons. And I thought that was a fantastic card. I haven't really looked at too many of the 40k cards because the precons were impossible to get. So I'm like, I'm not going to look, because then I'm just going to want all of them. This card is I think it's a superstar in this deck. I really like it.
Yeah, very good card. I like it a lot. The other creature I picked is Triumphant Adventurer. This is 1 white, 1 black. Has Death Touch, and as long as it's my turn, it has First Strike. So pretty much always making sure it stays alive when it's my turn. And then it says, whenever he attacks, you venture into the dungeon, and it's a 1/1. So this kind of has that, which is funny, I'm about to say this, it's also in the deck. It's got that Baleful Strix kind of thing, where it's a good blocker, because it's Death Touch, so people are going to try to not hit me. But when it's my turn, it has First Strike, so if I swing at somebody and they have a big creature out, I'm for sure killing it first.
Yeah. Oh, it's
and
annoying.
Then if no one blocks me,
Death Touch. It's
right?
annoying. That's great, though, on the body.
And so if no one blocks me, I'm getting to venture more into the dungeon, just get through dungeons even quicker. So,
and even if they do block you, you still get to venture. It's not dealing combat damage.
Yeah, good point.
Even just attacking.
It's attack trigger.
So
yeah, really, I think a really good creature for 2 mana, and I really like it. Also, the artwork is super sick.
Yeah, the artwork is very, very Dungeons and Dragons. So it's fantastic. That's another great card in this deck, and that's definitely going to help. I love the little kind of low cost cards that can really set you up. I'm a sucker for, in my Animar deck, the Risen Reef, which is 1 or 2 costs, and it's just sometimes if you got the right deck, the right theme going, sometimes those little 2 cost cards, 1 or 2 cost cards can really set you up, and that's one of those cards that if you get that in your opening hand, it's you may be worth sacrificing. I'd like to have 4 or 5 lands, but I'll take 3 lands in this artifact instead. You got a good opening play there, so I think that's a great card.
Yeah. Next up for my sorceries, I have Living Death. This is like one of my favorite. I have this in my Necron artifact deck. I've never gotten to play it and it be like impactful, but like it's a board wipe and benefits me because I'm trying to get a lot of creatures into the graveyard. This is 3 generic, 2 black for sorcery. It says each player exiles all creature cards from his or her graveyard and then sacrifices all creatures he or she controls, then puts all the cards he or she exiled this way onto the battlefield. So if I'm doing a lot of self-milling and the board is filling up with creatures, it's a board wipe, but also puts me at an advantage.
It's a very one-sided board wipe. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
As long as you have creatures.
Also triggers.
As long as you have creatures in your graveyard, which you should hopefully always have plenty of them.
Yeah. Also triggers Sefris because it's creatures entering the graveyard from somewhere. So
it's just the only bad thing about Sefris is that this ability triggers only once each turn. That's the one thing.
It is a draw,
yeah, keeping this card from a good card to a great card, because you could easily break this if that wasn't there. But they gotta balance these cards somehow, and that's kind of a really harsh penalty on it. But you're still able to get around it, and it's Living Death. I thought that was a really fun board wipe that kind of brings all your creatures right back. So it's a good card. I liked it.
Oh yeah. I picked 2 instants. One is one I actually recommended you put in the deck a while back. To me, Deadly Dispute. This is 1 generic, 1 black for an instant that says an additional cost to cast a spell, sacrifice an artifact or creature. So creature go into the graveyard, triggers Sefris. You draw 2 cards and create a treasure token. A lot of value, both in the card draw aspect and making mana aspect, just to sacrifice a creature.
Yeah, well, and plus it helps too if someone's about to exile one of your creatures that you really want to make sure you don't don't lose it. Kind of just sacrifice it so it goes to your graveyard so that you'll always kind of be able to pull it out with your commander or some of your other cards in this deck. So I kind of like that too, where you have the choice to sacrifice a creature, and if someone's trying to path or swords one of your your Avacyn or something like that, it's like, all right, let me cast this, let me sack it, goes to the graveyard, and then you get 2 cards and a treasure token off of it. It's all value for a 2-cost instant. I think that's worth it. Yeah,
for sure. Definitely think it's kind of a star in this deck. Next up, we have Trickbind, which I went and I was doing some research because I was like, I have not been on the receiving end of a Bojuka Bog, but I know Bojuka Bog would fuck up a Reanimator deck. I got to find some ways to counter that. So I found technically 2, this and a card called Stifle, but this is the favorite of it because it has Split Second, which means as long as the spell is on the stack, players can't play spells or activate abilities that aren't mana abilities. So pretty much just shuts down any responses. It's one generic, 1 blue, counter target activated or triggered ability. If a permanent ability is countered this way, activated abilities of that permanent cannot be played this turn. Just pretty much makes it so the Bojuka Bog comes in, you play this, it still comes in, you just can't choose to exile a graveyard.
Right, which that's kind of, when I was going over this deck and looking at things, that was one of the biggest threats I saw to this. And it's one of the reasons I haven't built a Reanimator deck and try not to, just because I'm just so scared of, all right, I got all my good stuff in that graveyard, and then there comes a Bojuka Bog, something that can't be countered. You can't counter a land. It's like, all right, well, that completely screws up my entire plan. Or there's plenty of other cards that, make people exile their graveyards, and then you're kind of just dead in the water. So the fact that, because this commander, does have blue in it, it gives you access to some of these fun instant cards here. So like Stifle and Trickbind, so that you can counter targeted activated ability or triggered ability, and that's just so helpful.
Yeah, very helpful. And I can definitely see we have some people who run black, and Bojuka Bog is an easy put in those decks.
Every single deck I have that has black, there's a Bojuka Bog. There's no reason not to run it. And whenever you watch a video or watch deck text, sometimes you'll hear them say, throw a Bojuka Bog in there. It keeps people honest, because all it takes is for no one to have any graveyard responses for one person to just abuse it. So you kind of always need a way in there to keep those people honest. And Bojuka Bog, if you run anything black, might as well put it in there, because it doesn't hurt you, and it could definitely save you if someone starts doing crazy shenanigans. That's why I always do it to Nick, our friend Nick in our pod. He always gets so mad because I'll do it even if he only has 1 cultivate in there or something. I'm like, I don't care. I drew into it.
Cultivate again?
I need a land. You're my guy.
Artifacts, which so tough to choose my favorite artifact because there's just all these mana rocks in here.
Yeah, too many mana rocks, I think, but you have to do it.
Why do you think too many?
There's too many. Zoria Signet, Demir Signet, Felwer's Stone, Wayfarer's Bauble, Orzhov Signet. It's just all of them. You have to do it. There's not a lot of ramp that you can get, with an Esper, and you need your mana rocks. And when I was going through my cuts and stuff, I was looking, I'm like, oh, maybe I could cut one of these signets or cut one. It's like, you really can't. You need them. You need the mana.
Yeah.
So
you
have to do it.
I think that that's another reason I've been trying to build less decks with green in it just to get better at like deck building, and like ramping is a very important part of our format, and like it really comes, and like I see why like in CDH like the fast mana rocks are so good is because like it gets you going, like you can, and like obviously like we're not running those in like our pod, but like it's strong. I mean, so definitely have to run like I 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 mana rocks pretty much out of my 10 artifacts. So, but I'm going to talk about an artifact that's not a mana rock. This is the immovable rod for 1 white. It says you may choose not to untap a movable rod during your untap step. When a movable rod becomes untapped, venture into the dungeon. And it has the activated ability 3 generic 1 white, tap it. For as long as a movable rod remains tapped, another target permanent loses all abilities and can't attack or block. So, twofold here. We can either venture into the dungeon, or we can lock down a creature or a permanent pretty much for the rest of the game if we choose to.
Until they can remove this,
Until they can get artifact, which artifact removal is plentiful. But yeah, I like these weird ways of like stopping people's commanders from going off. Like we talked about, like Imprison in the Moon from the last episode. This is just another way of doing that. I like these weird ways of doing it. This just happened. It's also super cheap, and also just happens to help my plan of venturing into the dungeon. So.
And it's great too because, you know, if you lock down someone's commander, say, and they, you know, they might have artifact removal, but sometimes, you know, you're saving that artifact removal for something that's going to win someone the game, or something that's, you know, huge. You kind of want to save it, and this kind of, it feels bad to waste artifact removal on it, but it's the type of thing, if it's targeting you, you have to get rid of it. So it's a very fun 1 cost artifact that can really throw off someone's board, you know, to the point where they realize, all right, I either have to waste some of my removal for this tiny little 1 cost artifact that affects no one else and doesn't really help them all that much, but it's absolutely ruining my game, so I have to waste this removal on it. Or it might force someone where, you know, they have to try to find a way to sacrifice their own creature to get around this. It's kind of it creates a fun complication for your opponents, and for you, it's nothing but benefits. You know, you get to play it, and if you untap it, you get to go further into the dungeon, or you could just leave it there and absolutely lock down someone's board by you know, taking away the abilities of one of their key pieces. So I really enjoyed that card. I remember when they spoiled that card, and it was like, oh, that's a lot of fun. I didn't know where I would ever put it. This seems like a perfect fit. Obviously, perfect fit. It's dungeon deck, and it also just kind of helps right there with the activated ability there. So it's a very fun card. I like that you put that in there, because that was definitely in my mind when you said that you were doing a dungeon deck. I was like, you know, I want to put that in there.
I love the flexibility of it, because if I put it on your commander 1 turn, and in like 3 turns, our friend Nick becomes the threat, I can choose to untap it and then put it on one of his big creatures, or one of his big permanents that's going to win him the game. So there's flexibility of, as the board state changes, I can move this to something else, and that's kind of nice. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
Whereas last month, Imprison the Moon, you play it once, it's gone.
Right.
So.
Yeah, and like I said, it's one of those annoying pieces that someone's going to have to get rid of, and to have to get rid of this instead of someone's, you know, Panharmonicon or something that's doing ridiculous stuff for someone's board, and instead you're like, nope, I have to use my removal on this little dinky thing that's completely screwing us up. It's I like forcing people to use their removal, you know, prove that they got it, you know, just make sure that they have it, and try to waste as much removal as you can as early as possible. That's how I try to play, at least. I like to make people waste stuff.
I mean, gotta get rid of them resources so you can win the game.
Oh, that's my favorite, you know, when someone's like, oh, I'm going to swords your commander when you play it on turn 3. It's like, okay, that's a that's a 2-turn inconvenience for me, but you just used your swords, 3 minutes into this game. So now I know you don't have that. I know there's other options, but at least that's one big one that you don't have to worry about from that one white player at the table because they wasted it foolishly on something so early and cheap. The enchantments. What do you got for enchantments? Because what do you have? 2 of them? 3 of them?
I have 4. I think the obvious pick was the Dungeon Delver, 1 generic and a blue commander creatures you have.
It's a background.
It's a background. Room abilities of dungeons trigger twice.
Absolutely.
So I was like, I feel like that's an easy one. So I put in Warlock class. This is 1 black mana. We talked about it last time. I love the class printings. This one says at level 1, at the beginning of your end step, if a creature died this turn, each opponent loses 1 life. That's not really the one I was really. That's just kind of a bonus, really. If something of mine dies, level 2 is the one I really enjoyed. When this class becomes level 2, which you make it level 2 by paying a generic and a black, you look at the top 3 cards of your library, you put 1 of them into your hands and the rest into your graveyard. This is another way to trigger Sefris. This is a way to get creatures into the graveyard, and also just let you look at the top 3, a little bit of card advantage. I like that. Then getting it to level 3 costs 6 generic, 1 black, which I don't know how often I would be doing this unless I'm trying to win the game with it. At the beginning of your end step, each opponent loses life equal to the life they lost this turn. So yeah.
Well, I am glad that you liked that card because I did not. That was one of the first ones I cut.
Oh no.
Which
fair.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you want to go into that yet. The only category left is lands, and I don't know about you. I didn't see any land that stuck out as anything special. You just got your dual lands, your triomes, your things. Okay.
Land is Gyre Reach Sanatorium. This is add for a colorless or pay 2. Each player draws a card and then discards a card. Another way to get it. I can do this on someone's turn to get another dungeon trigger with Sefris. And I mainly picked it because the flavor text at the bottom that just says all are welcome. Mm-hmm. It's just creepy.
Yeah, it's cool art too. Cool sanatorium art. But yeah, it's helpful. It's regular land. There wasn't really anything. And I looked too because I remember with my deck last month, I found the 1 or 2 lands that kind of helped and kind of fit the theme. There was nothing. I looked. I was like, it's a boring land deck, but that's fine.
Before we dive into the cuts and ads, I did want to talk about the Lost Mine of Feldover, which is going to be the dungeon I'll be running mainly for the deck. So you enter into the dungeon and you get the scry 1. Scrying I think is probably one of the best ways to kind of help yourself because you get to pick what you get next turn. From there we have 2 options. You can either go down the Goblin Lair or go down the Mine Tunnel. Goblin Lair lets you make a 1/1 red goblin creature token. The Mine Tunnel makes you make a treasure token. I think I'd always be going treasure token here.
I would think so.
Just better for me. And if we go that way, we have the option of Dark Pool or Fungi
Cavern.
I would probably go Dark Pool here, where each opponent loses a life and I gain a life. Just the simple, easy one. And then that leads us into the final room, the Temple of Dumathion. Which lets you draw a card. Dumathoin? Yeah, I'm not sure how you pronounce that one. I play D&D and I don't know how to pronounce that one. Simple 4-room dungeon that you can get through pretty quickly, as I found out in play tests, and let you get a creature back from the graveyard. So yeah.
Yeah, I was, Cody and I were talking about it before we started recording. So I was looking at kind of the other dungeon too. The Dungeon of the Mad Mage, but there's a lot more benefit. You get a lot more utility out of the dungeon, but it is much longer. So was it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 rooms as opposed to 4? So, where it is nice that you can, the final payoff is draw 3 cards, reveal them. You may cast one without paying its mana cost. that's a lot of work for 7 rooms to go through, and I just see myself playing this, doing that, and then drawing 3 lands and being like, well, crap. All right, that was all for nothing. And then you get to bring your 1 creature out because of your commander, but it's just easier to have that small room, that 4-room dungeon, and just kind of fly through it as fast as you can, as many times as you can.
Very fair, yeah. I think there's probably is a, like... There might be like a pod of decks we all play where it's kind of more casual. I think this is one of the issues with our pod is that like there are times where like everyone's playing a similar power level, but then there are times in the pod where someone is playing the deck that's going to win in like 8 turns. And so if I want to be competitive against the deck that wins at 8 turns, I obviously go for the 4-room. But I could see like if we're just chilling, having a good quality night, everyone's playing low power, doing one of the longer dungeons, I definitely could think.
Yeah, and if things break your way, I was play testing. I was even watching some other people on YouTube playing dungeon decks and stuff in prep. And sometimes if you get everything to break your way, there's people completing a 4-room dungeon in, 1 turn. Every turn they're just able, venture, play another creature, venture, play something else, room activates twice, then they played something, like they were flying through rooms. So if things break your way and you're cooking through those rooms, it might be worth it to finish, that first dungeon and then say, all right, I have all my set pieces here. It doesn't look like anyone's wiping the board. Let me try this bigger dungeon for my next run through, because you can swap them. It's just you're only allowed to have 1 out at a time, and once you finish it, then you could switch to any of the other dungeons. So it's always worth it to have that in mind. And I really like the flexibility that it's not just, oh nope, you picked this 1 dungeon, that's all you're allowed to run for the rest of the game. It's you kind of have that flexibility. So it's fun to keep that in mind.
Yeah, and definitely one of the playtests I did, I got it to where on turn 3 I had Avacyn out.
Jeez.
And I was like, this is amazing. Probably a 1 in a million.
I didn't run into that scenario.
Yeah.
All right, so what do you want to do? You want to talk cuts? You want to talk ads? What do you want?
Let's I think last time we did the ads first and then the cuts. So we can definitely do whatever one you want to do first this time.
All right. Let's go over some of the additions here. Okay. So, additions. I'm gonna start with creatures. So one is I'll go cheapest mana to highest mana. I think that's fun. So I'm going White Plume Adventurer. So this is a 2 generic, 1 white. When White Plume Adventurer enters the battlefield, you take the initiative. So that's the initiative thing that we were talking about. That starts that. And then at the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, untap a creature you control. If you've completed a dungeon, untap all creatures you control instead. So this is fantastic. Like you're saying, you're able to fly through those dungeons, super quick. So once you've completed 1 dungeon, which who knows, you could do that in 2 turns. Then you pretty much have Seaboard Muse. You're untapping all your creatures at the beginning of each opponent's upkeep. So pretty much giving all your creatures vigilance. I think that's a lot of utility, a lot of benefit that you're getting off of a 3-cost creature. It's a 3/3 Orc Cleric. Only costs 3, and I feel like that's a good addition. Something you can get out there pretty quick, and as soon as you complete the dungeon, then you're always going to have blockers.
Yeah, I don't know how I missed adding this one to the deck, because that is very strong, especially when 2 of the bigger pieces in the deck is Merfolk Looter and Obsessive Stitcher, which tap to draw a card, then discard, which would trigger Sefris. And so if I'm getting to do that on every opponent's turn, yeah, I'll be clearing through dungeons left and right. So I really don't know how I missed this one, especially because like I've heard people bitch about this card on Twitter because I think it like ruined Legacy or some format like that. So yeah, don't know how I missed this one, but yeah, definitely something to add for sure.
I appreciated you leaving some softballs in there for me. You know, I even texted you. I was like, "Did you leave out some good cards on purpose?"
You texted me that, and I started sweating because I was like, "I thought I did a pretty good job here. What do you mean?"
Not only did I send that to you, I think I sent it like 10 minutes after you sent me your deck list. It was like right away. You're like, "Shit, what did I forget?" I'm like, "No, don't worry about it."
I started sweating. I was like, "Oh no!"
No, so I think that's a good addition. Next one, Burning Rune Demon. This is 4 generic, black and a black. For a Demon Berserker, it's a 6/6. When it enters the battlefield, you may search your library for exactly 2 cards not named Burning Rune Demon that have different names. If you do, reveal those cards. An opponent chooses one of them, put the chosen card into your hand and the other into your graveyard, shuffle your library. This card is fantastic. It's flying 6/6, so it's a big body, but immediately what it does is as soon as it enters the battlefield, it lets you tutor up 2 different cards. This is kind of good for kind of negotiations, or if you want to kind of politic with someone else where, hey, I'm going to, reveal these 2 cards. I'd really like to put Avacyn into my hand, or I'd like to put Avacyn into the graveyard because maybe you're about to complete a dungeon. So kind of will let you politic a little bit. And even if it doesn't, it lets you take 2 cards, put one in your hand, one in your graveyard. You want creatures in your graveyard. So you could just pick 2 absolute bangers of, creatures. And it's like, yeah, pick whichever one you want. I don't care. I'll cast one. I'll get the other one out. So I think this is a great addition to the deck.
Yeah, no, I like this one a lot. I do like. I see where you're coming from with the politics thing, and I definitely think like there's just ways to kind of like mind game people, because like if I pick like a Baleful Strix and a Sun Titan, it's like, well, obviously like I'm gonna make you pitch the Sun Titan, but then yeah, like if I find a way to complete a dungeon, Sun Titan comes back, something else comes back right with it. So that's pretty strong. I like that a lot.
Yeah,
and yeah, 6/6 flying.
And even if someone,
pretty good.
This enters the battlefield and then someone kills it, okay, it goes back to your graveyard. You complete the dungeon, bring it back out, tutor up 2 more cards. So, you can kind of keep on pulling out the best pieces of your deck if you want. If you're able to get this, bring it out, kill it, maybe even sacrifice it if there's a board wipe coming up or whatever the case. Sack it, bring it right back out of your dungeon, and tutor up 2 more cards. So I thought that was a fantastic card, and I think it's a theme that we're going to see with the next card that I'm adding, which is Runescar Demon, which is 5 generic, black and a black, for a flying demon that's a 6/6. And when Runescar Demon enters the battlefield, search your library for a card, put it in your hand, shuffle your library. This is just it's a staple card, I feel, for something like this, where it enters the battlefield, you get to tutor up any card you want, shuffle your library. This is a big, it's a big scary card, so it's going to draw a lot of aggro, draw a lot of hate. People are going to want to kill it. Fantastic. Now you bring it right back from your dungeon. When you complete a dungeon, bring it right back to the battlefield or your hand, play it again, tutor up another card. And it's not just creature cards, it's any card you want. So if you need to search for an answer for something, or mana fix, or whatever the case may be, you can use this to kind of search up the perfect answer. So I thought I had this in my Kalia deck, and it definitely helped out a couple times where you can search up the perfect answer for what's affecting you on the board.
Another really good pick. Yeah, I like this one a lot, just because, yeah, it does everything, especially if you can pitch it early and complete a dungeon and bring it back. The only thing is, I'm shocked because you hate tutoring, so I'm shocked you even suggested this.
Yeah, well, I don't like the regular tutors. The demonic tutor, diabolical.
Oh, if it says tutor in the name, is when you're against.
Well, that's a boring card. All right, I'm gonna play this one card and get what I need. It's like, no, this is at least a body. This is a creature. It's got that ability. I don't know. My opinions don't make sense. Everyone knows that, and this definitely falls into that gray area, I'm sure, but. I don't. Yeah, Tutors up, but I don't feel too bad about playing this and pulling something up because it's five generic and black and a black. It's expensive, but you get a 6/6 flyer out of it, and hey, it's got the perk of searching for a card. So yeah, you can abuse it, and I'm sure if I play against you and you start doing it, I will hate it and I will say Tutors suck and we shouldn't play them. But for the time being, I think that's I think it's fine. I'll allow it. I'll allow it.
Definitely a good addition. And yeah, like it does everything really. Because if you need a land, if you're a little mana screwed, you can grab a mana rock. If you need it for a land, you grab a land. If you want to grab another big boy, you want to grab another dungeon diver. I mean, it does everything. So that's a really good addition.
All right,
good pick.
Cool. I did it. All right. Next up, let's talk. How's it going? Moxfield here. Sorceries. Sorceries are next. So I actually added 2 sorceries. Supreme Verdict and Damn. Both are the same thing. Board wipes. I figure you want a lot of creatures in your graveyard. What better way to get them than board wipes? You only had 2 in your initial deck list, and I feel like you could probably use a little bit more. Sometimes when you're trying to go as wide as possible in the deck, you want to cut down on the amount of board wipes because you don't want to lose too many of your valuable pieces. Here, where as long as you control your commander, you're going to be able to pull most of that stuff back out. I think it was made sense to bump up the amount of board wipes from 2 to 4. So for those that don't know, Supreme Verdict is one generic white, and a blue. Destroy all creatures, cannot be countered. Fantastic. We put that out there and pretty much can't get countered. Some people can still protect their board if they need to, but for the most part, it's a solid board wipe that's going to hit most of the time. As far as Damn, it is a black and a black. You can destroy target creature. A creature destroyed this way can't be regenerated. Or you can overload it for 2 generic and a white and a white. You may cast a spell for its overload cost. If you do, change its text by replacing all instances of target with each. So you pay 2 generic and a white, and you destroy each creature, and they can't be regenerated. So just another low-cost board wipe that you should be able to use to clear the board, get your stuff into the graveyard, and then hopefully start plucking them out and having a good old time with it.
Yeah, I like both of these. When I originally was making the deck, my 2 board wipes were Living Death and Cyclonic Rift. And I think I really prefer Supreme Verdict over Cyclonic Rift because to get the overload cost is 7 mana versus Supreme Verdict being the 4.
And Cyclonic Rift is so salty.
That too, yeah. And I also really like Damn because it can either just be a target removal of a big creature or it can be a straight up board wipe. And I don't know, that kind of it doesn't matter if my stuff dies because I'm playing Reanimator, just did not cross my mind. So I was like, well, no, I want to prevent that. I don't want my stuff to die once it's on the board. I want to keep it. But I have such easy ways to get it back onto the field. So these are both really good additions. Yeah, I'm definitely going to have to... I definitely think I will be cutting Cyclonic Rift.
Yeah, I wanted to put that on my cuts. I didn't. Spoiler alert. Just because it's too good of a card to cut. It's a card that I don't play because I won't buy it because it's expensive and I hate it. It's definitely a very salt-inducing card.
I proxied it. So
yeah, I could do that too. It's one of those cards.
Actually, I don't even think I didn't buy the proxy. It came free with another proxy. Fantastic. So yeah, I don't know.
Nah, I can't play it because I complained about it too much. And as soon as I play it, everyone's going to be like, whoa, where'd this come from? But Cyclonic Rift is just too good. If you have it, put it in there. If you don't have it, don't buy it. You could play other stuff that won't piss off the table as much. So that's my opinion with the Cyclonic Rift. But I kept it in there just because it's too good. It's too good to cut. Let's see what is next. We got instants, so I did add some instants as well. So I added Path to Exile, which I don't know why that was off there. It's a 1-cost instant, exile target creature. Controller gets to put a basic land on the battlefield tapped. just targeted removal. Can't have too much of it. I guess you could, but it's a one cost. It takes up one spot, and it can really, really, really get you out of a jam. Just instant cost, get rid of something, and I wasn't sure if there's a reason that you didn't have that in there or just oversight, but
so I have this weird thing where in my head I'm like, Path to Exile is a bad card because it ramps the opponent.
It doesn't. It gives them a basic land card tapped. It is.
What if that's all they need?
Oh, then next turn, then they'll benefit, I'm sure. But I feel like that is one of the more brutal removals. Like at least Swords to Plowshares, like I gain a ton of life. Sometimes if someone's removing something, chances are it's something big and scary. So it's like you get life. This is brutal. Basic land on the battlefield. Tapped. It's like so you lose a creature, you get one crappy land, and you can't even use it right away. You have to wait till your next turn until you untap. It's a great card. I love Path to Exile, and I think it's a good addition in here.
I agree. It just makes sense, but I don't know. In my head, I'm like not good. But you're right. It's good removal
and exiles too. So. Exile cards are always worth
very strong. Yeah.
And that's why another addition was Anguished Unmaking. Exile target non-land permanent, you lose 3 life. And it's for a generic, a white, and a black. So even 3 cost, and it costs you 3 life. But I still put it in there. Exile target non-land permanent. You can get rid of anything. Big creature, artifact. Maybe someone put an unmovable rod on your commander, and now you can't pull creatures from your dungeon, and now you have to spend 3 mana and lose 3 life to get rid of that 1 cost artifact. Whatever the case, you can get rid of anything with this. It costs you 3 life, sure, but instant speed, only 3 cost. I think this card goes in any deck that runs black and white.
Yeah, it's very good. I think I was running probably the worst version of this in D-Spark. So I think this is probably the better choice of those two because D-Spark has the downside of it has to be mana value 4 or greater.
Yeah.
Yeah.
D-Spark's good. I do like D-Spark. I wanted to keep it in there, but at this point now I added 2 more targeted removal. I was like, all right, I'll have to remove one. But that's I think that was a good addition. And then the other instant I added is actually one of the MDFC cards. Yeah. That's what it is, right? Yep. Malakir Rebirth / Malakir Mire. So this is either a 1-cost instant, choose target creature, you lose 2 life until end of turn. That creature gains. When this creature dies, return to the battlefield tapped under its owner's control. I thought this card was good because it will kind of let you protect one of your own creatures for a 1-cost instant. If someone's wiping the board, if someone's removing one of your creatures, if someone's double blocking and you weren't expecting them to, whatever the case might be, pay 1, put this on your creature, it dies, it goes into the graveyard, so it triggers your commander, and then it comes right back out to the battlefield. So I thought this was kind of good and kind of did double duty there with kind of synergizing with your commander by going to the graveyard, then coming back to the battlefield. And then also, if you don't need that, then you could flip it for just enters the battlefield tap, add a swamp. So just a regular land. If for whatever reason you end up not needing it, or if you're really hard pressed for land, you could always use it for that. But otherwise, it's kind of just a 1-cost, protect your own creature.
Yeah, I like this one a lot. I'm big on those MDFCs. I think they're really cool. And yeah, I didn't even think about the fact that this because it would die and go to the graveyard and then come back. So yeah, the triggering the commander thing is just a really nice bonus on top of keeping potentially one of my big creatures alive for an extra turn. So yeah, it's really good.
Yeah, it was between this or Kaya's Ghost Form, which I run a lot of, which is a 1-cost enchantment aura, which you enchant your creature when permanent dies or is put into exile, return that card to the battlefield under your control, which is great, but it's not instant cost. It is an enchantment. it's still a great card. I do run that in a couple of other decks, but for here, I thought this was very good. You know, you bring out an Avacyn and someone tries to get rid of it, you just kind of, you know, you're able to choose it, and as soon as it dies, it comes right back out, and it helps you out in the process. So I thought that was a real fun addition.
Yeah, really good card. These are all good, really good instants to add. I just need to get over my hate of Path to Exile, apparently.
I don't know why. That card's fantastic. Ramps your opponent with a tapped basic land. I'm willing to take the risk. All right.
Okay, fair.
Let's see. And I have 2 more cards left, and they are both artifacts. So the first one, Panharmonicon. This was the first card I thought to add. 4-cost artifact. If an artifact or creature entering the battlefield causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, it triggers an additional time. So for all your cards that say, you know, enter the dungeon or proceed to the next room, or even some of your creatures that enter the battlefield and let you, you know, search up creatures or, you know, return creature cards from your graveyard to the battlefield. I just thought that this kind of does a lot of work for what you're expecting from this deck. So it's not dependent on, you know, this card for your deck to do well, but it's gravy if it comes out and stays up there for a bit, and you're kind of getting double effects from some of this stuff. I think that will definitely help secure a win.
Yeah, when you told me you were suggesting this to add, I was kind of like, but why? Because it never really occurred to me that I could double up on dungeon triggers and then also like Sun Titan and other creatures. So that's a pretty good add. I own one, so it's kind of nice.
Might as well put it in there. It was weird because I looked up a lot of decks for this commander, and I didn't see Panharmonicon in most of them. I'd say like 90% of the decks I was looking at didn't have it, and I was like, am I just thinking if that does something it doesn't do? Like, I know sometimes I get screwed up with Panharmonicon and Doubling Season, and you know, some of those doubling effect cards, Doubling Season and stuff like that. But I think it works the way that I think it works, you know, and it was in some of the decks, and you know, I read it a couple times and kind of looked at some rulings, and I'm like, it does what I want it to do, so it goes in the deck. I'm putting it in there. So like I said, it's not dependent. It's not a, you know, you need this to do what you need to do. It's kind of a win more card, but it's 4 cost. If you have it, throw it in there, and you know, worst thing that could happen is someone removes it. You know, if it's on the battlefield, you're definitely going to get benefit if it's on the field for a turn or two. So it's definitely worth putting in there.
Yeah, for sure.
And then the other card, which I really like, it's only a 79-cent card. It's a 2-cost artifact, Perpetual Timepiece. Love this card. You can tap it, put the top 2 cards of your library in your graveyard, and then you can pay 2, exile Perpetual Timepiece, shuffle any number of target cards from your graveyard into your library. This does so much for this deck. You can just tap it and keep milling yourself, putting your cards into your graveyard. That's what you want to do. You want to be able to put your creatures in there so that you have something to pull out. And then for 2, you don't even have to tap it. You could just pay 2, exile it, shuffle any number of target cards from your graveyard into the library. Say someone's got a Bajuku Bog and they exile your library, or say someone, your graveyard, or say someone has, you know, a card that targets creatures in your graveyard to exile, or something like that. You could just pay 2, shuffle them right back into your library. Sure, they're not in your graveyard anymore, so you're not going to be able to pull it out with your commander, but at least you're not losing it. You know, nothing's worse than a big key piece to your deck going in your graveyard and then having it exiled and you lose it forever. So I feel like this kind of really does double duty, where you can just keep on tapping it to load up your graveyard, and then it's also kind of a safety device if someone targets anything in your graveyard. Is either this or Beacon of Immortality, which kind of lets you shuffle your whole graveyard into your library. And I wanted to add them both, but you know, it was kind of overkill for both, because you have the 2 instants that counter the targeted, the triggered abilities and stuff. So I was like, all right, this one's good because it pulls its weight 2 different ways.
Yeah, I like this one a lot. I think, I have a lot of looting where like you draw a card, discard a card. I don't have as much milling, and so I think I like this one because of that. It once again helps counter Bojuka Bogs, which is like the biggest fear. So I think this does go really well in this deck. I think my one issue is that like I don't like self-milling, and although I do it in my Black Necron artifact deck, but when the whole goal of the deck is Reanimator, I think it'll be perfectly fine.
Yeah, that's Reanimator, man. Best case scenario is you find a card that lets you put your library into your graveyard, which I did look up some of those too. I knew that I wouldn't be able to get you on board for that, but get everything into your graveyard you can. You have so many options of pulling stuff out. This seems great. You're able to get stuff in your graveyard, and then, like I said, you're able to protect it. You don't. It's not like, oh well, I can't save my graveyard because it's tapped because I use the ability. It's no, just pay 2, sack it, and then it's target cards from your graveyard. It's not even creature cards. It's just target cards. So you can even get back some of your ramp, your precious signets, if someone removed those for some reason, your immovable rod that someone had to get rid of. It kind of helps a lot. So those are my additions. Yeah. I added 10, and I think they just made the deck so much stronger. I really like the creatures I added, and then some of the targeted removal. It's kind of hard to play test by yourself to see how beneficial those are. But I really think adding 2 more of those is kind of really help, cut down on some threats that might be facing you when you're trying to get your little game of solitaire going for a little bit as you're trying to get your cards into your graveyard, get your pieces out there, complete your dungeons. It's going to take a little bit of setup sometimes. So a little bit of targeted removal will kind of help you make that play.
Yeah, no, I think these are all great additions. I think there's definitely a couple that really stuck out to me. It's like, how did I not find these before? And I'm definitely going to be adding them, like the White Plume Adventurer, the 2 Demons, Supreme Verdict, Path to Exile, the Perpetual Timepiece. Those are definitely pieces where I'm like, yeah, those for sure should be in this deck. The other ones I'm going to have to like sit down and really think hard on, because I think a couple of these cuts are going to hit me hard.
Oh, I got some good cuts here. You had some real crap in here, Cody.
Oh, did I? Okay.
I had to put on my mucking shoes and go through and cut this garbage out.
Mucking shoes.
No, you had good creatures, and some of this stuff's good, but some of it I took out for selfish reasons because I don't like playing against it, so I think that came across. But
really?
No, start with creatures. I cut a lot of your creatures. You had a lot to begin with, and I gave you, 3 suggestions for 3 new ones. But I did cut 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I cut 7 and added 3.
Yeah, so I think I originally had 34. Your list has 30. So yeah, I'm losing 4 creatures.
Losing 4 creatures. But the creatures you're losing, they're good cards. I don't think they're going to help as much as some of the cards that I added in. First card being Elish Norn. 5 generic, white and white. It's 4/7 Praetor. Creatures you control get +2/+2. Creatures your opponents control get -2, -2. It's a fantastic card. It's one of the best cards in white. Is it going to help you in this deck? No, I don't really think so. You're focused on getting real big boys out there. So whether you got a 7/7 or a 9/9, at that point it's kind of whatever. And creatures your opponents control get -2, -2. Yeah, that is fun, and that really does shut down, token decks or kind of low decks that go wide. But there's ways around it, and I just don't think for 7 costs that it helped your deck do as well as it should. And yeah, this is a big creature, and you complete a dungeon and you bring it right back out. It doesn't have an ETB. It doesn't do anything sexy when it comes in. It's just a static. You get 2/2. Opponents get -2, -2. Like I said, good card. I don't think it helps as well in this Reanimator deck.
I would.
Uh-oh.
I agree somewhat.
Okay.
That there are probably better ETB abilities. I think it's just a strong card, and maybe that's where I was coming at mindset-wise, was it's a strong card to have on the battlefield.
Mm-hmm.
So if I can cheat it out and have instead of playing 7, but I see what you're saying, that it doesn't really do much to immediately impact the game unless someone is playing specifically like tokens.
Yeah.
So,
well, wouldn't you rather
I see what you're saying.
Bring back a 7-cost demon that lets you tutor up for any card in your deck?
Yeah.
Or bring up
a
a
4/7. So
bring up a 6/6 demon that lets you bring 2 other creatures into your hand. It's
that's fair. That's fair.
So, hey, it's not hard set rules, but in my opinion, I think there's better options out there. Like I said, it's a great card, and unfortunately, it's a card that I put into a lot of decks, and it's usually one that I'll cut fairly early. Like that was in my Angels deck for a while, because it's like, I'll have a bunch of these Angels, they'll get +2/+2, and then it kind of ruins everyone else's blockers. But they're Angels, they're flying, so I don't really care about anything smaller than 2/2, especially if it doesn't have flying. And once your Angels get big and crazy, +2/+2 isn't the game changer you think it would be. So that was probably the hardest one to cut, because I do like the card so much. Let's go to the next.
It's also very expensive.
Yes. Yeah, just in
We're cutting it.
You're cutting
it's
it.
Out. All right.
I just saved you $43. All right. Next card. Gary, Merchant of Asphodel. Great card, too. When enters the battlefield, each opponent loses X life, where X is your devotion to black. You gain life equal to the life lost this way. Great card. I run it in a deck or two. When it hits and comes out, it's hilarious because you just gain so much life usually. However, this is a 3-color deck, and I don't think your devotion to black is going to be high enough to warrant this card. And I was thinking, I'm like, well, maybe if you bring it out, then sacrifice it, and then are able to bring it out, and then kind of keep repeating it.
I think that was my thought process. Was like, keep doing it. But I see what you're saying. Yeah,
you only have so much, so many black pips in this deck that I don't really think it's going to end up being all right. It comes out and everyone loses 6 life, and you gain 18 life. It's like, okay, yeah, that's nice. I'd rather bring back something better than that. I think there's better value, like bringing in a creature that can swing for 6 damage and get you cards. So that is a card that I like, but I think you can do better. Another card that I love is Guardian of Faith. Generic white and a white for a 3/2 flash Spirit Knight. And when it enters the battlefield, any number of target creatures you control phase out. Kind of a 3-cost instant Teferi's protection for your creatures. Love this card. I cut it from a couple of decks already because it's so situational. I feel like I never get to use it the way I want to use it. It's such a cheap card that when you get this on turn 3 or 4, it's like I could use a Vigilant 3/2 creature right now, but I kind of want to hold this in case there's a board wipe or in case something happens where I need to, Teferi's protection out. And I ended up either just using it just as a stock creature without anything fun, or just held on to it for, the entire game and never played it. So I think there's better cards to add. So got cut.
I would also agree with cutting this one. I think in my head I was thinking, I don't want my stuff to die, but then I'm realizing I'm playing Reanimator. I want my stuff to die so I can just bring it back out.
Yeah.
So I just a disconnect there. So yeah, this one can definitely get cut as well.
Okay. Next creature, Massacre Worm, which feels good because you said that you liked that card at the beginning of the episode, and last time you cut so many cards that I enjoyed. So this is payback. Massacre Worm.
Payback for Mordenkainen.
Mordenkainen stays. Massacre Worm, 3 generic, black. When it enters the battlefield, creatures your opponents control get -2/-2 until end of turn. Whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, that player loses 2 life. It's a 6/5. It's a fun card. I got this in my Rats deck. I got this in some other decks. My Life Gain deck, I think, or Griswold. That's what it's in. It's a good card. I don't think it's great for this deck. your opponents get -2/-2 till end of turn, so it's not even a permanent effect like Elish Norn would be. And whenever a creature opponent control dies, that player loses 2 life. You're not really in the business of killing a lot of opponents' creatures in this deck. A lot of your big boys are these big flyers that are kind of just flying over and hitting people in the face, so I don't think there's going to be that many chump blockers or anything like that, so I don't really know how many creatures your opponents are going to be losing to take a lot of benefit from that. They lose 2 life. I just thought there was better options, so Massacre Worm got the axe.
Yeah, up until you mentioned the 2 cool-ass demons, I was like, nah, Massacre Worm is staying, because it's such a cool card.
It's a great card.
Yeah, when you match it up against, being able to tutor for whatever I want, being able to, get something into the graveyard and something into my hand whenever I want, it does kind of seem like it's lacking a little bit, and I'm sure there'll be better black creatures that are big that come out down the road that I can trade it out for. So
yeah, doesn't even need to be a black creature. It just
could be anything, yeah.
Any an Esper. So yeah, I think there's better options. If you're like in Griswold, I have this because I'm trying to kill tokens as much as possible. So it's great for that. But for this, you're not worried about the little stuff. You don't let the bees affect you. Yeah, you're going for the big guys. So that got cut. Meteor Golem, 7 generic for a 3/3. Enters the battlefield, destroy target non-land permanent. I like it. It's a little expensive for what it does. But I thought it would be fun to keep bringing this back in, keep on destroying non-land permanents. But to bring in a 7-cost card and it's a 3/3, it's just...
So, yeah, I didn't realize it was a 3/3 until just now.
What do you think it was? You probably assumed it was a 7/7.
I thought it was like a 6/6.
No, it's a 3/3. It's a tiny little guy.
Is Cityscape Leveler also a 3/3?
Cityscape Leveler is...
That's the new one that came out in Brothers War.
Yes, it is.
You have it in a deck.
Yeah, I do. You shouldn't play it. It's too good. Let me look it up real quick.
Cityscape Leveler. Do this on the fly, guys. We're respecting this.
Yeah, we're professionals, That's the thing. Cityscape Leveler 8 cost for an 8/8. When you cast a spell, whenever a Cityscape Leveler attacks, destroy up to 1 target non-land permanent. It could, but the thing is, whenever you cast this spell, so it's not an ETB effect, so it would just be when it comes out. You're able to unearth it, so it didn't have as much synergy with the deck because it doesn't have that ETB. You can unearth it, but that doesn't really do anything for your deck. It's just a good card at that point, which there's good cards that fit the theme. So Meteor Golem, it's out of there.
It's cut.
Sir Conrad the Grim, 3 generic, black and black for a 5/4. Whenever another creature dies, or a creature card is put into a graveyard from anywhere other than the battlefield, or a creature card leaves your graveyard, deals 1 damage to each opponent. You can also pay 1 black and a generic for each player puts the top card of their library into the graveyard. This doesn't do as much as I think you'd like it to do. This is great if you're killing lots of creatures, if you're constantly throwing as much stuff into your graveyard. I think it would be a lot better, but it's only 1 damage. You have these cards that you put the top 2 cards of your library into the graveyard. Sure, maybe there's 1 land in there. It's, all right, everyone take 1 damage. It's like, okay. I think there's better options out there. I don't think going for the group's slug, side quest here of pinging everyone for 1 damage each time you pull a creature out or each time you mill a creature. I didn't think it added enough to the deck. I see you look skeptical. You like Sir Conrad, don't you?
He's pretty badass. You see that skull he's holding?
He's a badass card.
I do think there's some synergy there with Sefris because we are putting a lot of creatures in the graveyard. We are bringing a lot of creatures back from the graveyard.
Well, how many creatures are you putting into a graveyard each turn? You know, that's the thing.
I mean,
because that ability only triggers once per turn, so
that's true.
it's not like it's not like, all right, I just want to fill my board and then throw everything in the graveyard as fast as possible, because it only triggers once. So, you know, whether you're gonna ping everybody for 1 or 2 damage each turn, bringing creatures back from the graveyard.
Adds up. It adds up.
It adds up. Yeah, that adds
also
up.
Also a 5/4. It's a pretty decent body.
Doesn't fly. It's a 5/4.
I'm high on the copium of Sir Conrad. I think you have a point that it's not as good as I think it is.
Hey, it's great in the right deck. I have it in a couple decks. I'm trying to remember which ones, but I do have it in decks. But it's just that 1 damage. I don't know. I'm not a fan of the 1 damage.
In like an aristocrat deck.
Absolutely. And
this is not. Yeah, this probably isn't the deck for it.
You're not doing aristocrats. You're not doing group slug. You're doing reanimator. So every card that's in there should really do something. And this next card, it was a hard cut because I know why you put it in there. I know why you put it in there for a couple of reasons. Solemn Simulacrum. I said it wrong last time. I said it wrong this time. Sad Robot. 4 cost 2/2. When it enters the battlefield, search your library for a basic land card. Put it on the battlefield, tap, then shuffle. When it dies, draw a card. Great card. Enters the battlefield. You get a land. It dies. You draw a card. Yeah, this would be great if you keep on bringing it out for the land, killing it for a draw, then bringing it back out for the land, and killing it for the draw. There's a lot better cards in this deck already that have much better enter the battlefield effects. And bringing out a creature from your graveyard, you know, when you complete your dungeon, you get to bring 1 creature out. Is that 1 creature you bring out something that's a 2/2 that gives you a basic land tapped? You know, wouldn't you rather have something that does something a little bit better? Like, how often is this going to be the card that you pull out? I feel like this is, all right, it's the only creature left in my graveyard, so I guess I'm pulling it out this turn. You know, where meanwhile you'd rather be pulling out some of these other cards. Your Avacyn, your Burning Rune Demon, your, you know, these other things that enter the battlefield and help you venture into the dungeon so you can keep it going, or Sister Hospitaller that lets you bring stuff back to the battlefield right from the graveyard. I just think there's a lot better ETB effects. This was absolutely the last card that I cut out of the 10 that I cut, and there's even another card that I cut instead of this, and I ended up just swapping it back. I think yesterday I texted you. I'm like, I'm making one more change. Don't look at the list yet, because I didn't want to cut it, but I know why it's in here. It's good for ramp. It's a nice early body. It dies, you draw a card, especially in Reanimator. You're going to be bringing it back and forth 1,000,000 times. You get that land and card draw, but I think you're better off just with the other creatures entering the battlefield and doing something great when they enter. And plus, you know, as you're completing your dungeon, you're already drawing cards. Don't get greedy, Cody. You're getting greedy. It was a hard cut for me. It's a hard cut.
I think my thought process is that, like, if the game is not going well and I'm not able to get big creatures into the graveyard, this is at least a good thing to pull out of the graveyard with the completed dungeon effect.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Like I said, if this was the focus of the deck, or if the Reanimator was kind of just like a side part of the deck and you're able to just kind of flicker things in back and forth between the graveyard and the battlefield, absolutely. But for something that only triggers once per turn, you know, of creatures dying and then bringing back 1 creature per dungeon, you know, complete that dungeon, yeah, it might take 1 turn if everything breaks your way, but there might be some times where it takes 3 turns to finish a dungeon. So after 3 turns, do you want to bring back a 2/2 that gives you a tapped basic land? You know, it's a lot of work for not that much payoff, or not as much payoff as you can get with some of these other cards. So that's fair. It didn't make the cut. So that was it for the creatures. I cut a lot of your creatures, which I apologize for. So what did I say? Cut 7, added 3. So we're -4 creatures there, but I think that definitely helps let's see. Then I have one instant. I got rid of D-Spark. D-Spark's a great card, but I put Path in there. That terrible, terrible Path to Exile. And Anguish Unmaking, which I think is just better D-Spark. There was no need to...
Yeah, I would agree.
No need to double up on that. Enchantments. I got rid of Propaganda. You had Propaganda in there. 2 generic and a blue. Enchantment. Creatures can't attack you unless their controller pays 2 for each creature he or she controls that's attacking you. You're trying to get attacked. You want to get attacked. You want to be able to block stuff and have your creatures die while killing other creatures and go to your graveyard. So I kind of feel like you shouldn't be scared of people attacking you. There's no reason to hide in a pillow fort with this deck. You know, you kind of bring your big boys out there and it's like, come on, you know, come in and attack me. I'll block. I'll double block. I'll kill your crap. My stuff dies. I'll just complete the dungeon next turn and bring them right back out there. So I think while this is a good card in the right deck, I think it was kind of just wasting a valuable spot here for something that will kind of help you out. You should welcome the attacks.
Yeah. So I think so 3 things. This is the last card I added to this deck. And I think I added in the pretense of something we talked about earlier. I thought the dungeon mechanic worked just like the Monarch, where if you got hit, the other person takes the dungeon from you. That's not how that works. So I added this being like, because I don't want to get hit. I don't want to get hit, so make them pay 2. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, this is a very easy cut, and I agree with you on it. I also think I was just kind of in my head kind of be like, I think it was a recency bias where, like, someone had just played this in a game, like, a couple weeks ago, and I was like, really fucking annoying to have to pay 2 every time you want to hit somebody.
Well, because you kept forgetting about it, and you kept on, swinging all out. Like that's
I'm swinging 20 things.
Yeah.
I don't got the mana for that. So, yeah. No, this is another easy cut. I think I misinterpreted how the mechanic worked. So I agree with you. It just doesn't make sense to have in the deck. Yeah,
and you could use your Anguish Unmaking to get rid of someone else's Propaganda, whereas you couldn't use your D-Spark to get rid of it because it's not 4 CMC or more. So,
the other reason I added it was because the card art shows the symbol that Sefris has on their head. So
really? Oh, hold on! I didn't know it's a flavor cut here. It's a flavor cut.
It's a flavor cut. It's fine.
Oh man! Well, I didn't know that. That changes everything.
Oh, put it back in. Put it back in.
It goes back in. I'm sorry, everybody. Disregard the last 10 minutes. So, and then the last cut. This one's almost as delicious as as your sad robot. No, Warlock class enchantment. I know you like this card. I know you like the classes. I'm not sure if you just threw this in there because you were talking about how you like the classes and you felt like you needed to add it. I don't think this helps your deck at all. Comes out, it's a nice cheap enchantment. It comes out at the beginning of your end step. If a creature died this turn, each opponent loses 1 life. That's fine. I don't think you're going to win the game by pinging people for 1 damage, especially with this deck. You're level 2. When it becomes level 2, look at the top 3 cards of your library, put 1 in your hand, the rest in your graveyard. It's fantastic. If that was a standalone effect of the card, if this was like a 1-cost sorcery or instant that did that, I would probably keep it in there. Because, you get to draw 1 card, you get to put 2 other things into your graveyard, so you kind of get to manipulate your library and your graveyard all together. But for this, to do it now at 3 cost, and you only get to do that once. So it's not like that's a static effect that you can activate that ability every turn. So you kind of pay 1, and then pay another 2 to get there to do this 1 thing. And then even the level 3, 6 generic and a black. At the beginning of your end step, each opponent loses life equal to the life they lost this turn. You even said before, you'll probably never even do that. And if you do, it's... I don't know. I don't even know how much benefit you'd really get for 7 mana as well. So I don't think it's worth keeping in there just for that level 2. Something, kind of looking at the top 3 cards and keeping 1, pitching 2, I don't think that's worth a spot in the stack. If it was a 1-cost sorcery or a 2-cost sorcery, absolutely. But to waste something that you're not going to get benefit off level 1 or level 3, I'd say cut it. Put something better in.
Yeah, I mean, I think this was just like I like this card, but ultimately, yeah, it makes sense to cut because 3 mana to get a benefit one time just isn't that good.
Mm-hmm.
Like Wizard class with your deck last month it made sense.
Right.
This doesn't really make sense in this deck, so I would agree.
So those are my 10 cuts though, and I tried it before and after the play testing, and like I said, it's hard to play test and see how beneficial targeted removal is going to be, and to kind of get the full effect. But it with the changes I made, it did feel good when you pulled out like one of those bigger demons from the graveyard, or if you had that perpetual timepiece, so you're just able to keep on dumping the top 2. That's one of those cards that you could just keep on paying to keep on dumping cards into your graveyard. And it also gave you that safety net. I think even between those creatures and that one card, that one artifact kind of replaces what a lot of these cards are trying to do. So those are my changes, Cody. Take them, leave them, love it, hate it.
I agree with 9 out of the 10 of these.
Okay.
I think it's gonna be a little hard for me to cut Sad Robot, but I think these are picks that make sense after you kind of explain them to me.
Hey, cut Cyclonic Rift and put Sad Robot in.
There you go.
There you go. Look at that.
That's all I gotta
Real
do.
Real quick and sexy. But no, I like the deck. I played it a couple times. It's fun. I like the fact that it uses a mechanic that's not utilized all that much. And like you said, with Monarch, we kind of did the same thing where we just kind of start throwing random Monarch cards in there because it's fun to click the little crown button on a spell table to draw a card, to attack someone. It gives you incentive to attack someone. When there's not a lot going on, sometimes it feels bad to swing in on someone that has nothing on their board. But man, if they're the Monarch, that gives them a nice target on their back. Lets you know who you should be hitting. So I'm excited.
I think it just would add a little spice to the table. A
little spice. Keeps it spicy.
Keeps it spicy. But yeah. So just like last episode, we're going to see how we stack up to the average deck on EDH Rec. Lazz, how many cards do you think
let's see.
match up to
the
average deck?
I felt like it was very hard to find a lot of variation on this deck. When I was looking at different deck lists, different videos, I feel like a lot of people had very similar builds. So I'm going to say we probably had a lot of overlap. I would think probably in the 80s. I'd say low to mid 80s, probably. So
in total, we had 68 cards that matched up.
Really?
I think we need to talk about this. When it comes to EDH Rec's average deck, I think it favors newer cards really heavily.
I agree.
And throws those in, even if there's just decks being made to see how they play test. So that does take into account. And I think the other thing that was different about my deck versus the average deck was when it came to like the big creatures people were bringing back.
Mm-hmm.
I think that changed it up quite a bit. And then I think there were just like basic cards that I did not put in the deck because I didn't like them. I think there's 2 infinite combos with this deck. I did not want to have an infinite combo. And there's just a couple like other spells that I just didn't like, such as Unburial Rites. This is a sorcery. It's 4 generic and a black. You return target creature from your graveyard to the battlefield, and it has flashback 3 and a white. You can cast this from his graveyard for its flashback cost and exile it. I just felt like 5 mana for something that I could be doing by playing creatures and going through dungeons wasn't what I wanted in this deck.
Mm-hmm.
What's the other card? So, like, for example, when I talk about the newer cards, the average deck is saying that a lot of people are playing the new Elishanorn. They're playing the new Drivnod Carnage Dominus, the Dominus cycle that came from Phyrexial V1. So there were cards that like were suggested to me on EDH Rec that I was like, no. And like I said, I've been trying to do better about like using Scryfall to find a lot of the cards.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
And
so I think
I'm
maybe
surprised.
that is how I missed White Plume Adventurer. Like that might have been how I missed it. So
yeah, and I noticed that a lot of times, whenever I'm looking at decks, and it's like, oh, well, 90% of decks have this card, and it's like, why? This card's garbage. Like I just I was going through my Angels deck last time we were playing, and what's this card? I have it right here next to me. That's the only reason it popped up. Sanctuary Warden, this 6-cost Angel card, and it's, I'm reading it. I'm like, this doesn't help my deck at all. And then I go on EDH Rec. It's like, no, everyone plays that in their Giada deck. It's like, because it's an Angel, I guess. Like, so sometimes you can't always go by EDH Rec, and that's kind of why we were doing this podcast, because it's all right, we'll pull some from EDH Rec, pull some from Scryfall, pull some from here, pull some from YouTube creators that you see that are running this commander, this same archetype deck, and it kind of gives you a more realistic view of cards that you'd be playing or that people are playing in these decks, because just because EDH Rec says that 90% of people play it doesn't mean that it's good. They might be playing it because it's the new sexy hot card, and people are just trying to, cram it into any deck they can, or like you said, just building decks to play test, new styles.
Yeah.
So, I'm very surprised. Though. I thought we definitely would have more overlap than that, but yeah, 68 cards. I'm very surprised, but hey, that's good. We're both creative deck builders. Look at that, Cody. Look at us.
I think it helps that like the average EDH Rec deck isn't looking at, well, hey, I don't want a Bajuka Bog to ruin my entire night.
Yeah.
It's like I went and looked for cards where I was like, I don't want that to happen, so here's 2 cards that would prevent that for me. So it's definitely, like, EDH Rec is a wonderful tool. I'm always going to recommend it for newer players when they're interested in looking at a deck, but I do think it helps to go to Scryfall, look what other people are playing, and pick like your cards that you want to play. So,
well, so Cody, I guess we have an important question here to ask. Do you think you should brew it, or you think you're gonna screw it?
I think I'm gonna say screw it.
Really?
For now.
For now, okay.
While I really enjoy the way this deck play tested and things like that, there are a couple issues that I ran into that I just didn't enjoy. As I've talked about in the episode 0, I enjoy monocolor and I enjoy 2-color decks. When we get started in the 3-color and you have to really have to mana fix things, that's where I run into a lot of my issues. But Reanimator, you can kind of avoid a lot of that, so that's good. Other issue I ran into is I felt like if I had one bad hand, the entire what I was going for with the deck just falls apart, and I'm left doing nothing until turn like 6 or 7.
Jeez, yeah.
And that feels bad. It feels really bad. At that point, I'm like, why not just scoop?
There was a lot of times while playtesting this that I did have to mulligan, like several times.
Yeah.
And we play very fast and loose in our pod with the mulligans, kind of mulligan as many times as you need to get a decent starting hand. Don't just mulligan for combo pieces or for Soul Ring or for what, but you can only play so many hours during the week. So it's like, all right, well, don't want to waste time by having someone sitting there till turn 7 not doing anything. So when playtesting this deck, there were a couple times where I mulliganed like 4 times, and it was just kind of like, all right, well, let's see how this goes. I'd would rather have more land or some of those mana rocks and signets and stuff. Kind of where are all those? So that did happen. So I do understand your reasoning with that point of it.
Another big issue with this deck is when I made my deck, it was at $400 and about $30, and that is a little pricier than I'd like when I make a deck. Because I think removing Elishnor and taking out Cyclonogryph help a lot. I can definitely get the price down, but I think I want to wait and see. My other big issue with making this deck is we don't know when we're going to get support for the dungeon mechanic again.
Yeah.
We don't know when the next D&D set is, or if there's another set where they'll introduce this. So then I'm really only ever going to be able to upgrade this deck with cards like Sister Hospitaller and things like that. Mm-hmm. And you know me, Lazz. I like updating decks. I like finding the new hotness. I like finding a combo and being like, oh, I should really put this in.
Yeah.
And so that worries me that I wouldn't be able to find something like that for at least another year because we don't know what next year brings at this point.
I was just shocked at the cost of this. You know, I'm looking at the deck that we went over last month, and it was $243. So it was like $200 less. And for as expensive as this deck is, I was hoping that it would be a little bit more consistent in the play test. When it worked, it was fun. When it worked, it was great. Yeah. You know, you're ripping through those dungeons. But like you said, there are times where you're just unable to do everything. So if this was, you know, a $200 deck, then I'd say, you know what, it seems like it would be fun. And there are a lot of cards that if you have to buy that, you know, you're able to kind of piece into other decks if you do decide to break this down. But to spend, you know, $450 or somewhere around there to build a deck that didn't seem like it was clicking as easily as I wanted it to, yeah, I could definitely see at least holding off and seeing if you can get the price down with some of these cuts. You know, a lot of the prices tied up in the lands. That's the problem with 3-color decks. You know, I'm looking, your 36 lands is $117 just for lands. So yeah, you could definitely shave some of that price off. You know, get rid of some of the shock lands and dual lands and what have you. But you know, even still, you're still looking at, you know, well over a $300 deck. You know, $350 deck for a dungeon mechanic that, like I said, wasn't as smooth as I wanted to be every time. I was mulliganing a lot, and there were some games where I kind of just, got to the point where I was like, all right, I don't have enough cards in my dungeon in my graveyard to recur, so I'm kind of doing dungeons for no reasons now. You know, just depending on how you draw into it.
I definitely think this will be a deck that I will potentially build in the future one day. Mm-hmm. Just for right now, I think it is going to go in the screw it pile for me, and I'll revisit it once, you know, if we get more support, or if I really am like, no, I kind of really want to play that deck. But for now, that's where it comes down for me.
Okay. Hey, I agree. I think there's better deck that you can build for that much money. You know, and definitely not the same mechanic, but or not dungeons, but you know, if you want to do Reanimator, I think there's a better way to do it for less money. So maybe that's something that you revisit your next deck. Even maybe see if you can get that perfect Reanimator deck.
Yeah. But I do want to end on a high note.
Okay.
Because I don't want y'all. So we're introducing something called the Golden Screw, which is our card of the deck. This is a card that we found like really awesome. And for me, I think it's going to be Sister Hospitaller. It's just such a fucking strong card.
It really is. Oh, well, I don't want to be lame because I had the same one.
No, I mean, hey, it's such a good card. I mean, it gets the vote.
It's a great card. The only other one that I'd say is, I don't want to toot my own horn here, a little toot, but Perpetual Timepiece. I feel like that's another card that adds a lot. You know, it's your deck's not hinging on this card being out there, but man, if it's out there and you're able to just fill your graveyard and just that protection, because the one thing that I think really, really screws this whole deck up is someone exiling all your creatures or exiling your graveyard. You know, it's as far as exiling all your creatures for like a board wipe, you know, good luck. Your bet's as good as mine for how to get rid of that to Fairy's Protection or whatever you got. But to protect your graveyard, I think is your second, priority in this deck. And for a card that gets the creatures in there and can also protect them. I think that's great. But Sister Hospitaler, I thought was great. It's a great card to bring out. Gets you some life. I really enjoyed that card. I thought that was an enjoyable addition.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's going to do it for us. You can follow us on Twitter at Brew It or Screw It, where we post pictures of the games we play. We talk about different things on there, so definitely give us a follow there. If you're enjoying the show, be sure to like and follow us on all the platforms. I saw we just got 4 new followers on Spotify, so thank you so much for that. We're pushing 100 listens across all the episodes so far, so thank you for that.
Insane. I don't know why anyone wants to listen to us talk about Magic, but if people listen, I'll keep talking, so be sure to send comments and suggestions and any of those things as well. If there's a deck tech that you want us to discuss or you want us to talk about or maybe consider for one of our upcoming decks, by all means, send a comment on Twitter or a comment in the iTunes reviews or and anywhere on there. And we'll definitely look into it, or at the very least, we'll talk about it. We can talk before we go over our deck tech, about, someone wanted us to talk about this, or kind of give our thoughts and views and stuff on this play style or this card style or whatever. And hey, we'd be more than happy to do it.
Yeah, for sure. And definitely let us know, is this a deck you currently play or you were thinking about building? What are your thoughts on it? Did this episode help you get a couple ideas? Things like that. Another way you can reach out to us, I don't think we've ever talked about it, is we do have an email. It's brewitorScrewit@gmail.com. Feel free to reach out to us through email as well. But yeah, just let us know what you think, and we'll definitely listen to the feedback. So yeah. Anything else, Lazz?
No, I think that's it.
All right. Well, until next time, which it'll be Lazz's turn next time.
Yes, it will.
So until next time, should we say brew it?
Or screw it.